Thank you so much for joining us on It's Time today. We are your hosts. I'm Linsly Donnelly, your citizen scientist and your longevity expert for midlife women.
And I'm Dr. Jen Wagner, physician and holistic performance expert. Welcome to It's Time, powered by Prosper. Just a quick reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. We are not offering medical advice, nor are we entering into any type of physician or clinician relationship with listeners. Always consult your healthcare provider before beginning any new fitness, nutrition, or lifestyle changes to ensure they're right for you. Your health and safety is our priority, and let's keep it that way.
All right. Well, once again, we're so excited that Jen and I can be in the same moment in time, even if we're not in the same physical home. We're at least in the same time.
Finally.
Love this. But as Dr. Jen and I were thinking about the end of the year, probably y'all are too, and in some ways, like I'm pretty sick of New Year's resolutions and annual goals because we've been doing them for 50 odd years. But on the other hand, we're big data and metric oriented people. And so we thought it might be helpful if you're interested in getting a little bit of a baseline between now and the end of 2025 or the end of the calendar year that you're listening to this in. What are some easy at-home assessments that you could do to say, where am I now? And then what are some goals you could put out there if you like goals? Where do I want to be in 3 months? Give yourself the time to hit the goals in at a pace with grace. So that's what we were talking about today, was we look at kind of 6 arenas of life and say, what are some turnkey assessments? You don't need technology to do it. You don't have to pay a bunch of money to go to a lab to do it. Just what can you test yourself at home and then get that number? And then what are some of the best in class for midlife women goals that we can share with you if you want to have a target?
Yep.
Target optimal.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I love some of these, and some of these we haven't even tried ourselves yet. So we're gonna put on our shoes. You already got your workout gear on. Mine's like under here. Put my fancy sweater on for all of you, so you can see it. But I think that we have a lot of data on us at all times, and for some of us it's great. For some of us we need a break. But I do think like in a starting place is important, and I'm trying to help people, and I feel like I spend a lot of time at work doing this too, of getting over this idea that it's a test and that you can actually fail it, because that's not the case. And so I think, and even for myself, like I know I was laughing with the guys at work a couple weeks ago when I went to do my VO2, and I was like, okay, I think I'm finally ready, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, why is that your mentality? So I think that I think that might be the first step in when we talk about these assessments, is like, there's not a bad score. It just is what it is. And it's like, it's just where you're starting from. And to be honest, sometimes the higher it is, the harder it is to make change. Sometimes if you have more runway, it's like you can see progress sooner. So it's like, don't be afraid to do this because you're worried that it's going to be bad. Like that doesn't exist, but we're human. And so we understand that feeling.
I love that. It's this analogy of like, hey, we're on an adventure, a grand adventure. And if you wouldn't give a starting place on the map a bad score, you'd be like, I'm starting here and I'm on an adventure ahead. And that's what this is, right? This is our adventure. So where are we starting from?
Love it.
We go forward. Should we get into our physical ones? Because that's where movement.
Yeah, let's start with our physical ones. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay. Well, because there are a lot of these that you could do that are like, how many can you do of X in a minute? And we liked it because a minute's pretty short. That doesn't mean you're sitting there trying to run a test that takes you 20 minutes to do. So these are on offer, things that you could try and see how many of X can I get done in a minute. And this is where I'm right now. And then if I want to have a target, what should the target be? What could the target be?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and what this reminds me of, and we should pull this up, we'll attach it in the references, is the old school PE evaluation, right? It's like the president. Yeah. And like, that's almost impossible to do. Like, I can't get through that thing. But anyway, again, not failing, but like, it's like, this is stuff that we've known that are good examples of levels of movement and levels of fitness for a really long time, and again, to echo your point, like, there's a lot of fancy stuff, and you and I love to talk about tech and gadgets and stuff. This is just like, put your shoes on, find a stable surface in your house, and you can do this with your watch.
Yep. Well, do you want to do the first one? Because I feel like you're going to crush this one when we go and try this test.
The high knees?
Yes, because I mean.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So I haven't done this yet. And this is interesting to me because We warm up where we take our HIIT class. We warm up at the bow doing high knees quite often. And I have a little bit of an unstable ankle. And so sometimes it's a little wonky for me to do that. But like, this is really interesting. So how many high knee reps can you do in a minute? Now, and this is really, it's working on not only like hip flexor core stability, but there's a lot of neuromodulation in the ability of your foot to hit the ground and come back up and to continue that cycle. And so this is so interesting how all of life is connected. I've been doing a lot of training with my kids, and we've been doing some speed and power training. And a lot of it for my runner is these like foot dynamics. And people are like, that's not really a workout. I'm like, it's actually cognitive. It is neuromuscular patterns that her muscle bundles are getting used to. So anyway, I think this is super interesting that yes, this is a physical test, but there's a really big cognitive component to it as well. But anyway, what we're talking about is standing up and then driving knees up to at least like 90 degrees, with your hip, and then back down and just going alternating legs to see how many you can do in a minute.
Okay. And so the target in a minute for the midlife woman or midlife guy, I'd love to share this with
60.
Yeah. Target 60.
60 to 80.
60 to 80, you're in solid shape.
Yeah, solid shape. Yep.
But stretch
80
goal.
to 100.
Stretch
Good.
goal.
Like you're doing great. Stretch goal over 100, right? And that's probably, that's what they're describing as kind of elite fitness level.
Yeah. So you're fast.
As far as stability and power.
Yeah. And stable.
Speed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's how many high knees can you do in a minute? That's test number one.
Yeah. Easy, right?
Ooh, yeah. Push-ups. We've all heard about push-ups, right? So this is like, to me, this is the best total body to body workout thing you can do, because it's your core, it's upper body, it's lower body if you're actually tense and holding your quads and your glutes. It's cardio because you definitely feel it when you're doing it. So the push-up, how many can you do? Now, I think there was a bunch of stuff going around in social media at some point that it was like every woman should be able to do 11 push-ups.
11 push-ups.
Which is a great target. But even more interesting is how many could you do in a minute? And the way that they measure this one, you can do the knee version if that's where you are right now. So don't just say, I can't do a full push-up. I can't even do it. If you're doing knee push-ups or you're doing wall push-ups, whatever you're doing as a push-up, how many can you do in a minute is the idea. And I think to be kind of fair and apples to apples to everybody else who's running these tests, it's a wide arm push-up, right? It's not the tricep push-up, which is the military push-up. It's the toughest push-up out there. So I think the target is to be able to do 7 to 14 is like, you're doing great. If you want,
absolutely.
20 to 25 is for midlife women is a stretch goal. I think I'm looking at this too, to check it for men. It's not that much higher for men. It's like 25 to 35. For midlife men.
Yeah.
And if you're doing full push-ups and then you drop to your knees, that's great too. Whatever it is, just bang out as many as you can with good form in a minute.
Absolutely. And I think this is like the perfect exercise to add at the beginning or the end of your workout, like almost, or if you don't have time to work out during the day, or just day gets away from you, like doing a couple sets of push-ups, again, just to restate, one of the best exercises you can do for yourself. And so I know it has become my go-to when, don't feel like going to the gym, don't get to the gym. I'm feeling like today kind of having a little bit lazier of a day, I will still do some push-ups at some point in time. And so, just a couple minutes really can make a big difference. Yeah. Love that. Okay.
All right. So the push-ups, you're targeting in a minute, and we're, try, why not 20? Give it a shot.
Yep. And then I think on that kind of total body fitness, I think our next one is plank, right? And goal of working towards, can you hold a plank for a minute? Really a good indicator of strength, core strength, all of those different, all of those small muscles. And so really working up to a minute of strength. Right.
And if you can already do a minute, then just keep adding 10 seconds, just keep, about a minute 10, and mix it up with the side planks so that you're really kind of 360 on the core stability.
Yeah. And this is, we're talking forearm plank, but you can, do it arms extended as well. If you don't have any wrist and shoulder problems. I think that, the other really important thing kind of with all of these exercises is when you're starting and like when you're doing an assessment, like keep yourself honest. Like try, like, we can let our form slack to sometimes get an extra rep or two. Probably better for what we're talking about is like, how many really can you do with good form? Because we know when we start to lose form, that's actually probably the point in time where we need to say, okay, this is my baseline. And when my form breaks down, I've actually pushed past my baseline. That's when we worry about injury and things like that. So like if you're planking or doing push-ups or even high knees, like if you're really feeling your form is going away, it's probably time to like cut your test.
I love that for all of these because it is, there's no reason to invite injury. So hold the form.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, sit-ups. The sit-ups test I thought was interesting only because I feel like we've all been reading so much about how you don't need to do sit-ups for your core and lots of other ways to work your core, which is true. And if you want to set a benchmark for how strong is your core, sit-ups are kind of an easy, efficient way to at least measure where you're starting from. So even if you never do a sit-up until the next time you do the assessment and you're working your core other ways, this is a great way to metric how effective is the core workout that you're doing with sit-ups. And
Absolutely.
So to do them in a sort of an intermediate level, midlife women, the target is between 30 and 40 sit-ups in a minute. And that is the old school classic sit-up like this, right? It's a knees up sit-up.
So let's define this because I want to make sure that I'm understanding. Is it like feet flat on the floor, knees bent sit-up? Okay. Now, can you put something on your feet to like weigh them down?
Yes. Yeah. You can
or put your feet against a wall or something, tuck your toes under something. Okay. So feet on the floor, knees bent, hands behind the head, all the way up to your knees and back down.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. That's a lot of core strength.
I mean, 30 to 40 is a lot. So our
30 to 40 is a lot.
We will report back. Our homework is to go do all these tests ourselves.
Yes, for sure. I know. I'm feeling the urge to go to change my clothes and go do something other than sit in front of a computer today. Not that I don't love talking to you. Next time we should do this together, like in person, and we should film ourselves doing it. Okay. And then I think this last one, the first several have really kind of focused on strength. There is a little bit of a cardiovascular component into high knees and into push-ups, but again, it's not an or. We know we need cardiovascular fitness. Heart disease is still our number one killer. Probably the best bet we have against that is exercise, and we need strength. And so, to truly measure our aerobic fitness, that is challenging. Like, you got to find a gym or some place that has a performance center that has VO2 equipment. It's uncomfortable. You have this mask on, but there's a lot of assessments, like home assessments, that will give you a pretty good estimation of what your cardiovascular fitness is.
And at least give you a starting point, right? It's like, you don't have to, it's not like you have to hit a certain number. It's like I hit this number and then I train and had the number move, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you want to explain some of the ones that you've researched and looked at?
Yeah. So I got my notes here because they're like, you got to really follow the exact steps. But running lines is one way to do. That's like your old school running in the gym, right? You run the quarter court, the half court, the full court, and back. And so timing yourself to go up the lines and down the lines and just see what that time is a starting point. And then you can do it again and see if you've gotten any faster.
And so that's actually not a calculation that you're going to do to like measure something personal. It's just, here's what I did. Here's the work that I did. Here was the time. Yeah. Kind of like running a little time trial.
Totally. Yeah, just a starting point.
Right. And then it's like, go do your training for 3 months and come back and do it again. And are you better?
Yes. Yeah. That's just
faster, I should say. Yeah. Very faster. Yeah. Faster. Cool.
And then the one that's kind of a little more specific, it's called the Rockport walking test. And if you have an Aura ring, I think you've probably done this or you've seen it because it looks like that's probably the calculation Aura's doing when it tells you to go walk a mile as fast as you can. And then it spits out your cardiovascular age. It looks like it's doing this test. But if you don't have an Aura ring, you just want to get a pen and get a pencil and paper. This is what you do. You walk a mile as fast as you can, not run. You walk it as fast as you can. You time it. And then you immediately get your heart rate after that. And if you can't do it in exactly 7 minutes, just use the data from a 1 mile walk test to estimate what your cardiovascular fitness is. So you do the test, you walk the mile, you record your time, and then you check your pulse for 15 seconds and multiply by 4. Or you can use a heart rate monitor to get your heart rate immediately at the end. You can put that data into this online free resource called the Rockport Walking Test to get an estimate of your VO2 max. So you just need a pencil to note those things down, like how quickly did you walk the mile? So you got to actually have an accurate mile. If you can't do it in 7 minutes, just how quickly can you walk the mile? What is your heart rate within 15 seconds times 4 for a minute, or your own heart rate monitor, and you input it in the Rockport walking test calculator.
Got it. Yeah. So because probably no one can walk a mile in 7 minutes. That's a pretty good running clip. But it's basically, instead of doing this like 7-minute run, this is the alternative. Okay. I love this. And I think, I think the interesting thing about having an estimate of your VO2, and again, this is not absolute, it's not, but it's going to give you a ballpark idea, is we kind of know norms of what different VO2s correlate in our kind of functional capacity, and what people, most people with a VO2 of X can go do Y. And so it can really help you plan that. If you say, okay, again, this is a more complicated calculation, but you can find these things that I know my VO2 is going to decline by, this percentage per year or per decade as I age. And at 80, I want to be able to get on and off an airplane, walk for 3 miles, and do something else. And then you can kind of predict, okay, well, that means at 50, if I'm calculating in the average decline, I need a VO2 of here, and this is what I'm going to train for. And so it helps you can set some long-term goals too.
Yeah, I love that. I think when you were talking about kind of the strength goal too, one of the things that we did not mention, which we both are big fans of, is the grip strength, right? So the hang from a bar.
Yes. Yeah.
So the goal is literally just to hang from a bar. Not all of us have a pull-up bar. If you've got like a closet bar that's really stable, that might be possible. Otherwise, you just got to pop it to a gym and do it. You hang from a bar, and the goal is to be able to hang with both hands, just like a pull-up, not a chin-up grip, a pull-up grip, hang for a minute. And then every bit you can do beyond that is great as well. But the grip strength is an important metric for longevity. I am right now struggling with my left grip over my right grip. And so I'm trying to figure out how to build grip strength, and I'll try to do it with hanging with one arm.
Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of different things that you can do kind of on your own time, really low to no cost, that are reproducible. I think that's the other big thing, is like, it's great to go and do some fancy tests, but if you can only do them once, like I would also recommend, like, if you have the opportunity to really go get a formal VO2, or even we've talked about this with DEXA and some of the other assessments that we really like, then come home and like do one of these tests and correlate it. And then it's easy to follow your own metrics, right? It's like, okay, I mean, I did this the other day, like my VO2 in the lab was this, my watch tells me it's this. Right. So now I kind of know the difference. And so I know if I've improved 2 here, I've improved 2 there, right? Or whatever it is. And so I think you can say, especially if you're going to do something like maybe you're working on how, running lines, or how fast you can walk or jog a mile, or whatever the thing is, it's like you can correlate it to some of these other more specific metrics, and then have a way to evaluate your progress as you go on.
Yeah, I love that, being able to do it at home. Were there any other kind of physical fitness tests we had? I mean, we've talked before about balance, like being able to stand on one leg.
Yeah.
8 seconds, right? That's one.
Yeah, I think, any of those things. And again, yes, there are some data-backed protocols that you can do, but you can also just do this, like, again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be a measure of where you are. It's like, okay, if I'm standing doing dishes, can I stand on my left leg for 15 seconds? Can I stand on it for 30 seconds? Can I do it on the right? What's the difference too? Because then that's really great information that if you're working on some training or working on your fitness, you can notice the discrepancies between one side or another.
Yeah. So the balance one, targeting a minute is a solid number. And then the more you do, the better. The other one I know that you and I have both done before when we were doing our BFR work was the wall sit, and being able to do that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Another one falls in the do it a minute target. So those are our minute tests that we got.
Yep. Love that.
So the next arena, kind of cognitive, checking in on your cognition. Sometimes that's like a scary test to do, but there were a couple of them that are on our radar that people can access for free online. And again, it's just, you get a baseline and then you try to improve the baseline. You don't have to.
Absolutely. And again, and I think these are, I think like, don't be scared of these, it's again, a testing point. Some of them are going to seem, some of these are more clinically oriented, where, they're really looking for major, like they're not going to pick up on little things. They're looking for like major cognitive disturbances. Some are more subtle, right? And so you can find, and they can vary. Some take an hour, some take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So just kind of whatever you're interested in.
Yeah. So we are flagging 4, and we'll have them in the notes. You don't have to like pull your car over and write these down, but there's 4 of them. One is called the SAGE test, which is probably the most comprehensive. And it's actually used in the context of like the Alzheimer's and dementia indicators, right? But it's a pretty time intensive one of the 4. But the other 3 are much shorter. One is called the MOCA test, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment test.
Yeah. This one's super common in healthcare. It's very well validated. So, I think there's good literature to back that up.
Yeah. And it's 15 minutes, so it's not super hard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't even have that, there's the mini mental state exam, which is a 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And mini cog, which is 3 minutes.
Yeah. And so the mini mental status exam, like that sometimes is even to look at like really acute things. So we can use that chronically or acutely. Again, it's very well validated and things like that. I think, these are a lot of the time looking for pretty big discrepancies. So I think there are some more nuanced and commercial assessments available too that look for more minor changes in cognition that we might be worried about. And again, taking it as a baseline and then playing some games, doing a crossword puzzle, playing some memory games, learning something new, all of those things can help then improve our cognitive skills.
When you say memory game, I just have to put a plug in for this game because we've been playing it as a family since our 15-year-old was 4. And it's a holiday memory game. It's like, those claymation TV shows when we were kids?
Yeah.
It's all those characters. And it is the hardest memory game because there's nuances to what the different card means. And our youngest is like 90% always the winner. But we all play it as a baseline. Like we played at the beginning and they were like, at the end of the holiday season, are we faster at it? Are we better at it? Can we get closer?
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like our internal memory maker. But I think that's a simple way to kind of test your cognition. Or your
And I think the other thing too is remembering what we can do when we actually sit down and focus. I think a lot of us feel like our cognition is slipping and it's really just distraction. And we're pulled in so many different ways all the time that like giving yourself 15 minutes to sit down and focus and like do one of these assessments kind of can show you like if you can carve out 10 or 15 minutes a day to sit down and like focus on your cognitive health, my guess is like you're going to feel more confident about it than what we do sometimes when you're like, I don't know where my glasses are. They're on top of my head. All of these things. So
yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then on the emotional front, we've talked about this kind of in our early days when we were doing our mindset pillar in our early episodes. So we'll put on offer some really easy, do this by yourself with a piece of paper. But then there also is a great online resource, Barbara Fredrickson's site, if you remember that one, Positive.
Yeah. Yep.
Her site has, if you're like more metric oriented and you want to enter in the stuff every day and check it in 30 days, that is a great resource. It's free. She's got maybe, I think, 20 questions that you ask yourself and you grade yourself. And then you could check back in once a week and just see if you're seeing a trend line on, I want to feel happier or I want to feel more optimistic, whatever that objective is. But the quick ones that you can just do yourself is think of the simple 3 questions, how am I feeling today? And give yourself a 1 to 5, and write it down. Mm-hmm. At the end of each day, how am I feeling? What has been occupying my mind the most? And only pick 2. And then is there something that I need that I'm not giving myself right now? And if you have those as kind of your 3 check-in questions, how am I feeling? What's occupying my thoughts? Is there something I need that I'm not giving? It is a way for you to organize action around how to address the first question about how you're feeling.
I love that. And I think those are so important to do this time of year, as we are in holiday season to kind of check in with ourselves as well, because it's a time of year where it can be rough for a lot of people. And it's a time of year where we can get really off track in this place. I also, you have a couple other on our list that I actually really like. Again, even just using a journal or a spreadsheet or whatever you can use to kind of document like how you're feeling day in and day out. Because I also think that we sometimes forget when we were happy or when we felt relaxed because we also don't document it. And the negative tends to overcome us. Like, gosh, I've been tired for a month or I've been this for this long, and we forget about the happy periods. And so I think sometimes tracking your mood and like reminding yourself and notating when you feel good too is really important. Like, I think we tend to focus on the negative when we use these tools. And it's also really important to know, like, today I woke up, I'm like, I slept through the night last night. Like, I feel really good this morning. And like to remember that. So later this week when I'm like, gosh, I haven't slept through the night in a month. No, Jen, you slept through the night on Sunday.
Yes.
You're doing great.
also that, I mean, you're practicing one of our main levers is that neuroplasticity, right? You're wiring it into your brain. And when you tell yourself what is good and when am I happy, is you're wiring that pathway. So that's a great tool as well. On the nutritional pillar, so we talked about movement, we've talked about kind of emotional health and cognition. On the nutritional pillar, quick assessments. I'm not sure that these are as accessible outside of getting labs as much as it just is doing the macros tracker and the fiber tracker. So if you just do a food journal for, it's a pain. Nobody likes it in the beginning, but if you just do a food journal for 7 days and you get a sense for what am I doing in terms of targeting the protein macros or targeting the fat or clean carbs or fiber, that can also serve as your foundational baseline. And then you set a target for it in 30 days and check back in.
Absolutely. And can be fun to kind of get a baseline before you go into your like holiday meal planning and say, and maybe you make some substitutions to help you stay on track if that's an option.
Yeah. There was one I added up because I'm curious about it for myself is ketones and generating ketones, being able to stop eating early and not eat until 7 or in the morning. What does that do in terms of autophagy, and ketone being the thing you can measure that connects to how effective is your body executing that autophagy? So that's one that I
Mm-hmm.
do. You can urine test, prick your fingers, and it's at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty accessible.
Yeah, for sure. And can help you, balance your carb intake too, if that's a concern. Absolutely. Okay, community. I think this is a great time of year to kind of check in on that too. We tend to be representative of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So, kind of checking in saying, who am I spending time with and how is that? Again, it's not being selfish, but just time to check in. Like, how do I feel about that? How do I feel about those 5 people? How is that serving me? How am I serving them? And just making sure that those relationships continue to be beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we've talked about before is doing that inventory, over time. So there's some people who are super important to me who were just not nearby. And so I had to have to go and methodically outreach and make sure I keep them close to my heart. And then there are people who are in our day to day who actually aren't as great for my energy balance, and so I've got to actively purge the amount of time that those interactions happen. So it's just an orchestration effort more than anything else. And doing the 5-person in your head baseline assessment can give you the kind of catalyst to put that mechanism in place to really curate your energy amplifiers, your peace amplifiers, as you think of how you want to do 2026.
Yeah. And then I love this other one. And, you bring this to the forefront all the time about especially in this digital world that we live in, the importance of physical touch and, giving somebody a hug or even just the physical touch and caring for your body, like, can you get a massage? Can you, and it doesn't have to be a fancy spa massage. It's like, can you tell your kids, like, can I have I'll rub your feet if you rub my feet.
Yeah.
Whatever these little things are, like really that human contact is really important for us.
Yeah, it is. When we were trying to kind of find tools to help my mom, that was one we were bringing in was a massage into her room. Like, she's not going to go to a spa. That's not something that can happen right now. So we're trying to find ways to just orchestrate. If you don't have family nearby or somebody who can be part of that physical connection point, it's worth the investment to go find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we did kind of make a little bit of a substitution as we were talking about spiritual assessments, and maybe I do think like some of the community assessment could cross over into the spiritual. Who are you spending your time with? How are those people making you feel? Are they making you feel connected?
Yeah.
Do you have a place where you feel connected to something larger than yourself? And just checking in with that. But we did want to put this last piece in, which I think is really critical, is a financial assessment.
Yeah. And I think this has been top of our minds over the last couple of years as we've both started to think through what is health span and lifespan and longevity. What does that imply for financial health? How do you think about what your long-term care needs might be in a different way than maybe we did 10 years ago? And how do you think about if you are reaping the fruits of all this midlife work, what's the adventure budget that you want to have? What are the excursions? Are you traveling back and forth to see friends and family all over the country? Are you taking care of grandkids, great grandkids? So giving yourself the permission to really see 40 years down the line and plan for that financial landscape with a little more acuity than the generic retirement plan that we might have all been thinking about in our 30s and 40s.
Yeah. So what tools, I mean, you're so good in this area. What tools do you recommend?
Well, so there's always kind of just doing your net worth, right? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? And what is that net worth? And how can you grow that over time, whether it's through investment or, the phrase that I think I've been hearing so much lately is mailbox money. Do you think of a business you can put in place that's a cash generator, that you're not having to spend time in that operating role all the time? But I went out and tried to find a couple of these online assessment tools that people might be able to use. One is called the CFPB Financial Wellbeing Scale. And so it's a 10-question scale. It's publicly available. It's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And you get a score between like 0 and 100 about your financial security. So I think that's something to start with and say, if you don't have a financial advisor or you're not in partnership with a financial planner or an accountant, and for some people, that just doesn't make sense. This is a free tool that you can use to assess where are you right now. And then you want to do sort of like we talk about the ATIA Centurion test, right? It's like, what do you want to be doing in 40 years?
Yeah.
Let's assume that your health is great. What's the fun you want to be having? And then let's assume that your health isn't. How is that being covered? Is your insurance plan going to cover that? Hard to know what's going to happen with Medicare and Medicaid, up for grabs right now.
Yeah.
And so do
Yeah.
you plan to be privately paying out of pocket? It's a really tough crystal ball to look at, but it's not, just because it's tough doesn't mean we don't need to look at it. So we need to look at it. Then there are two more. One was called the Money Helpers, the Money Midlife MOT. MOT stands for Ministry of Transport Test. I don't know where that acronym came from. I think it's like a UK term, but you can also access this online and take a look at what your financial situation is, and then figure out what should you think about making priorities in terms of your action items to improve that financial situation. And then the last one is called the Rutgers Financial Fitness Quiz. Again, it's free. It's topic specific. You can kind of look at what's your financial fitness, and then you can look at what's your investment risk profile. Where should you think about investing if you've got a risk profile that's high or low? And so, they're free. So the robustness of the tools is going to be a little bit reduced relative to a formal wealth advisor or a financial planner. But sometimes that's the best way to get started, is just to kind of get a gut check on where am I? And again, the answer is not, doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be terrible. It's like, this is where I am now. Where do I want to be going forward? And when we were talking with our kids about this, especially right when they get out of school, we were trying to describe this idea of, put 10% aside to give away to the charities you love, save 20%, you have 30% on your living expenses, and that's it. And then start to think about where do you want to invest in, either building businesses or disposable income. Just having a point of view on how you're spending your money is as critical as is whatever that point of view is. Just have a point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, no, that's such great advice and like so important, right? And again, your point is super, super valid that sometimes, we talk about a lot of the stuff that we can all go do hard things. And like everything that we've talked about in these assessments can be labeled a hard thing, but that doesn't mean we shy away from them, and that we can still do it with a mindset of curiosity and, excitement that this is just I'm curious about where I am because I know where I know what I want to be doing. And so, but it's so much easier to actually get there if we have a plan to get there versus putting these, esoteric things out there like I want to go around the world when I'm 80. Well, okay, that's awesome. How are we going to get there? And so I think, by taking these first steps and like creating some baselines and then creating a system that says, okay, these things are actually pretty tangible. And I think the other thing too is like, we tend to surprise ourselves. We sometimes go into these thinking like worst case scenario, and we come out, we're like, I'm actually doing pretty well. Like I'm actually, so I think also like, that's a great time to say, wow, look at how well I am doing. And now if I do these steps, I'm going to be able to reach my goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as you were describing that, we've talked a lot about ways to use AI or tools. And some of these arenas, if you don't have a financial advisor or a private wealth manager, you can find a lot of these first and second level recommendations by using the AI tools. And of course, fact checking them and gut checking them. But I think a question that everybody needs to ask at the end of every year, but especially right now when we just had a massive legislation change come through, is, are there tax strategies I should be taking advantage of in this calendar year? Because the rules are changing in 2026. And so thinking about philanthropy is one that just popped in my head. The rules for philanthropy are changing pretty fundamentally. So there's a lot of people who are thinking about, overly giving or overly investing in a calendar year, because the benefit to doing that is significantly better than it will be in 12 to 18 months. So those are questions that we're not experts to answer.
Definitely not an expert to answer those, but good questions to pose.
So, you can think about, what should I be thinking about that's going to be different in the calendar year ahead from a tax perspective, from the global economy's perspective, just as a thought starter. And then you plan with your partner on if you think there's an action item that's related to that.
Yeah. And so I know for those of you that are still with us, this is kind of a, like, not heavy episode, but there's a lot of detail in here. So I would say, like, pick one or two, right? Like, we don't need to assess like everything. Like, pick one or two that seem really interesting to you, or maybe something that in this next year that you're really focused on to get some baselines for, and start there.
Yeah, it's an adventure. I love that setup that you had, which is like, there's no pass fail. This is like where you're starting. Have some fun playing with where you might want to go.
Absolutely. And we will make sure to link to some of the specific tests that we talked about. And thanks again for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. If you liked what you heard and you got some tips on how to live better right now and for the long haul, please help us reach more midlife women. Please share and rate and like this show. And we can't wait to continue the dialogue with you on our next episode. Until then, thank you. It's time.